What is your trip horror story? So, this happened about 2 years ago, and it still gives me chills whenever I think about it. It started as a normal trip. 4 of us, me, my best friend Dylan, his girlfriend Kayla, and my cousin Mark, just wanted a quiet weekend in nature. Dylan found a cozy cabin online. Cheap price, good photos, surrounded by forest. It looked perfect. The drive was fun at first. Snacks, music, bad singing. But the farther we went, the emptier the world felt. No cars, no lights, just endless trees. When we stopped at the last gas station, the old man behind the counter asked, "Heading up the ridge?" Dylan said yes, and the man stared at us. "Not many folks go there anymore," he muttered. "Stay on the road. Don't get lost in the woods." It sounded like a line from a horror movie, and we laughed nervously. But when we got back in the car, nobody was laughing much. By the time we reached the cabin, it was past 11 p.m. The place didn't look like the pictures. Same shape, sure, but weathered, run down, sagging porch steps, windows fogged with grime. The woods pressed so close around it that it felt like the trees were leaning in to listen. Inside wasn't better. Dusty, musty, furniture, older than my grandparents. But Dylan insisted it was rustic charm, so we unpacked. We ate quick noodles, played a card game, and tried to ignore how unsettling it felt. Around 2 a.m., I was still awake. That's when I heard it. Footsteps outside, slow, steady crunching on gravel. My stomach dropped. At first I thought it was Mark or Dylan, but both were snoring inside. The steps circled the cabin. Crunch, crunch, crunch. I peeked through the curtain. Nothing but trees and blackness. Then, silence. I started to relax when suddenly, one knock on the front door. Not loud, just a single, heavy knock. I froze. Nobody else stirred. Eventually I dozed off, convincing myself it was an animal. But in the morning, when we stepped outside, there were muddy boot prints circling the cabin. None of us had boots that size. The boot prints bothered all of us the next morning. Big, heavy, mud-caked tracks circled the cabin like someone had slowly paced around it in the middle of the night. Mark crouched down, holding his hand against one. "Whoever it was," he muttered. "They're huge." Dylan tried to laugh it off. Probably just a hiker passing through. But none of us believed that. Who hikes around someone's cabin at 3 a.m., knocking on doors? We brushed it off as best we could, made coffee, and decided to hike a nearby trail. The forest was dense, the air damp, with pine and moss. At first it was beautiful, birds chirping, sunlight filtering through the branches. But the deeper we went, the more it felt like we weren't alone. Twigs snapped behind us now and then. Leaves rustled, even when the air was still. Kayla kept glancing over her shoulder, swearing she saw movement in the trees. "Dear," Dylan insisted, "this place is crawling with them." But when we stopped, the sounds stopped too. And when we walked again, they started back up, like footsteps echoing our own. Halfway through the hike, we found something strange. A tree with deep gouges carved into the bark. Not claw marks, too neat. These were long, deliberate cuts, like someone had dragged a knife down the trunk again and again. Fresh too, sap still glistening. We didn't stick around long after that. Back at the cabin, unease settled heavy. The musty smell inside seemed worse. We found scratches on the back door. Not as deep as the tree, but the same jagged lines. That night, things escalated. We were playing cards when the lantern flickered. Dylan smacked it until it steadied. But in that moment of near darkness, Kala gasped. "Did you see that?" she whispered. "See what?" I asked that. She pointed toward the window. None of us wanted to look, but we did. Just blackness. Our reflections faint in the glass. But Kayla swore she saw a shadow move. Not ours. Someone outside. An hour later, the footsteps returned. Slow, pacing, circling again. Every creak of gravel made my skin crawl. Then came the knocking. Not one, but 3 knocks this time. Harder. We froze, whispering arguments. Should we open the door? Should we yell? Call out? But our phones had no signal, and the old landline in the cabin was dead. The knock stopped after a while, but none of us slept easy. When dawn broke, Mark checked outside again. This time, The boot prints weren't just circling, they led up to the window and stopped right beneath it. Whoever it was, they had been standing there, watching us. We tried to keep it together the next day, but the mood was different. Breakfast was quiet, nobody joked anymore. Even Dylan, who'd been brushing everything off, kept checking the window like he expected to see someone staring back. Mark wanted to pack up and leave. "This isn't worth it," he said. 3 nights in a discount murder shack. Screw that. But Dylan argued, "We paid for the whole weekend. It's probably some local trying to spook tourists. If we run, they win." I didn't agree, but part of me didn't want to drive those horrible roads at night either. So we stayed. We decided to hike again, just to burn the nervous energy. The trail felt worse this time. No birds, no bugs, no sound at all, except our feet crunching leaves. The silence was so heavy it almost rang in my ears. And then we saw it. Another set of boot prints. Fresh. Pressed deep into the mud. They weren't ours. They were bigger. The prints followed the trail for a while, then veered off into the woods. Kayla stopped walking. "He's following us," she whispered. "He's actually following us." We sped back to the cabin, paranoia clawing at us the whole way. That night, we barricaded the doors with chairs and whatever furniture we could drag. The lantern light flickered, shadows stretching across the walls like they were a live dot around midnight. The footsteps came back. This time they didn't just circle. They ran. Fast. Around and around, heavy boots thudding the ground. Whoever it was wanted us to know they were there. Then silence. We sat in the dark, clutching makeshift weapons, a fireplace poker, a kitchen knife, even a heavy lamp. My heart pounded so loud I thought it would give us away. And then came the sound that chilled me more than anything. Whispering, not faint, just outside the window. Too soft to understand, but clear enough to know it was human. A man's voice, low, murmuring words we couldn't make out. Kayla covered her ears. Mark hissed, shut up, but she wasn't making any noise. The whispering was real. It moved from window to window, as if someone was slowly circling, talking to themselves while watching us inside. When I finally worked up the courage to peek through a crack in the curtain, I saw it. A faint beam of light, a flashlight bobbing between the trees, and for the briefest second, the outline of a man, tall, broad, standing still, staring straight at the cabin. I yanked the curtain shut, my chest tight. That night, none of us slept, and in the morning, we discovered something worse than boot prints. The back door lock was scratched, almost broken. Someone had tried to get in while we were inside. By the morning of the 3rd day, we were wrecks. None of us had really slept, and every creak of the cabin felt like a warning. Mark was dead set on leaving, but Dylan still resisted. "We'll just stay together, grab the car, and drive out." "Done," Dylan said, trying to sound confident. But when we got to the car, our last bit of hope vanished. All 4 tires were slashed. Not just deflated, shredded, deep knife marks through the rubber. Someone had made sure we weren't going anywhere. Kayla broke down crying, her voice shaking. "He wants us trapped here." Mark kicked the ground. "We are trapped." We argued about hiking back to the gas station, but it was miles away through dense forest. If the stalker was out there, he'd have every chance to corner us. So we went back inside, barricading the doors again. The daylight gave us a false sense of safety, but as soon as the sun dipped, the fear came back sharp. It started earlier this time, around some 11 p.m., before we'd even turned off the lanterns. The footsteps came, not pacing this time, stomping, deliberate, circling faster and faster. Then a bang on the front door, loud, violent. We all jumped. Another bang, then another, shaking the thin wooden frame. "Who's out there?" Dylan yelled, his voice cracking. Dot. Silence. Dot. For a long moment, we thought it was over. Then, through the window, we saw him. A man, just at the tree line, standing perfectly still. Watching. We couldn't see his face. Only the outline of a tall, broad figure. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there like a shadow carved out of the night. Kayla whispered, "Oh my God, he's not even hiding anymore." We killed the lanterns, plunging the cabin into darkness. But that didn't stop him. The banging started again. Now on the back door, then the sides of the cabin. Like he was everywhere. At once, we huddled together, clutching our pathetic weapons, praying the doors would hold. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning in that terror. Finally, just before dawn, the noise stopped. When we stepped outside in the morning, he was gone, but the ground was littered with footprints, hundreds of them, circling the cabin like a ritual dot. And on the porch, carved deep into the wood, were the words, "Stay INSID." When the sun finally rose, we didn't waste a second. We packed what little we could carry and started walking. The forest felt endless, every branch snapped, making us flinch. But somehow we pushed through. Hours later, a truck came down the dirt road. The driver stopped when he saw us, four exhausted, filthy, terrified kids stumbling out of the woods. At the ranger station, we explained everything. The officers exchanged glances that made my skin crawl. One of them finally said, "You're not the first ones to report this. We've had people go missing up there."